Hello everybody. So this is going to be this is going to be kind of like a mix of material. In this lecture what we're going to do is, this is going to be my first somewhat scientific lecture that isn't part of the From Rhythm to Algorithm series. In that series we proved that quantum mechanics there was never any logical reason to think there was a different mathematical ontology for quantum mechanics. But we're done with that, we've pushed that aside, we've built more mathematical tools. And now what we're going to do is something I think is a lot more accessible, well certainly a lot more fun. But we're going to explore the function of language. And so this lecture is called Language, Litigation, and Integration. How words work and why it matters. I made the point in one of my previous lectures that not everyone's a mathematician. But everyone uses language. And now we're going to really truly explore how you learned words, how I learned words, how everyone learns words, and how it expands, right? We said if you're thinking about the large-scale evolution of scientific diction, I'm talking hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, I mean, you have to look at how language expands from the whole species. And to start, I literally want you to try to answer well, okay, so we're going to do some math and science, some exploration of language, and then we're going to tie it back. The House Judiciary Committee just approved obstruction of justice and one other charge for a valid impeachment hearing or vote today. So we're going to do all of these things in the context of law and of business. So the first thing I want you to do is try to answer this question correctly. In math class, if someone writes 1 + 1 = 3 on the board, the answer is no, it is incorrect. And I'm telling you there's a correct answer to this statement. So try to guess what it is. What is the most general phrase you can say to correctly describe any object or experience? Anything. Literally anything. And I guarantee you've said it to yourself or to somebody else hundreds if not thousands of times. Try to answer that question. Give you 3 seconds, and the answer is, it is what it is. I just said, but you write in math class 1 + 1 = 2. That is a check mark. That is correct. You write 1 + 1 = 3. That is incorrect. Now language, as I've pointed out and proven, is vastly, vastly bigger than mathematics. And we are going to show how this sentence expands. We are going to add more words, make it more specific, more specificity. And it's completely sideways. But that is what we're going to be expanding on first. Okay, so just reviewing some of the previous stuff from my other lectures, I asserted, and again it's profoundly, overwhelmingly, empirically true, sound is the basis of language. Forget our species, there's plenty of animals out in the world, they all make sounds to communicate. Somehow, sometime, we went from making noises to representing those noises with letters. That is why you can read any statement on the board to communicate with one another. But there is a set number of sounds that human beings can make, and that's well known within literature right now. And then grammar preserves the dynamic of sound because of rhythm. And this little of rhythm, this is what I have provided, basically all of it. But you're a physical being, you make noises in the same way you can't. Living in 3 dimensions limits the degrees of freedom and the way you can act, like the physical ways you can actually move. And all of those are determined by rhythm. And that's really all I want to review there. And like I said, these things I'm saying are true for all languages. At this point I'm actively deriving in French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian. Not really Greek yet, but I'm also learning Greek, Russian, maybe Latin, I don't really know. We'll get to that's not really all that relevant. But the point is, these things are true regardless of the language you were speaking. Because again, sound is the basis. A language is just the grammar that you set up. So coming off of the last lecture, or the last slide, I just want you to think about one question. How do we, or you, say no? I want to go to the store. I do not want to go to the store. I have a doctor's appointment. I do not have a doctor's appointment. Now, from the physics that I've presented, and we know that the arrow of time only moves forward, well, that's going to affect how we structure our language. And again, not language, not Brad, Johnny, and Joe sitting down and saying, hey, here's how we talk, but this is how language literally actually developed. And we say no by asserting something and then saying the word no. Time is only moving forward. We make affirmative statements only and then say the word no. Forward. And we only make affirmative statements. Now, what if I said, I do not want to go to the store? Well, I want to go to the store. Sounded like an idiot, but got the same meaning across. So what if I said, I do not want to go to the store? Well, 3 nots, that means I don't want to go to the store. But what I'm showing you right here is what I've already integrated into, this is true, I mean this is empirically true, it's called the empirical value function, literally how you say no to things, but this has a mathematical analog. Anytime the number of nots, times an even number means yes. A not times an odd number means no. And that should be kind of profound. I mean, it should be kind of obvious, honestly, but this is literally how you function. This is how everyone learns words. Well, this is how people say no. Building off that, like I said, this is extremely important into mathematics, but this is overwhelmingly true. But now getting back to what I just said about how does anyone learn language? Well, you mimic the people around you. No one was born speaking words. You literally, and that's another fun fact, it takes a person about 7 times, 7 uses of a new word to learn it. Remember I said there's base 2 number system with 7 elements. And I guess on the other science lecture I didn't even say, that's why you have half-lives. The most fundamental proof of a base 2 number system is we talk about half-lives. But 7 uses of a new word to learn it. And that's what I'm saying there's no independent languages, is because you'll have statements, right, in the House Judiciary conversations where you have quid pro quo. I honestly personally don't know what it means, but that right there is, everyone uses language to describe the world around them. We take the it is what it is statement and we add more specificity to be more direct. But human history is very, very large, right? And there's different languages at different times. So if someone correctly describes a physical thing, or some process or some experience, that diction is going to stay in our vocabulary for thousands and thousands of years. That is why you have the Greek Septuagint, and you have the Latin translations. Those are where those words come from. It's because they're actually the most correct representation of the experience everyone knows to be true. But that's what we do. We look around, as a baby, you're sitting there, oh, wah, wah, wah. And then you hear your parents say things and you learn from the context. Remember, I ended the last lecture series with spelling a word constructs a variable and the context defines that word. And that is literally how everyone learns language. And yeah, this is how we say no. And now moving on. So now it's time for a brief history lesson. And again, this is just to give you context of talking about language developing literally over civilizations. But human anatomy allowed, or we expect it to. I personally don't know. There is no biologist that really knows how or why language started. We don't know yet. It's definitely an open question. But the human anatomy allowed for language right around 50,000 BCE, before Common Era. And that's when people could talk. The first civilization that is on written record is the Sumeria. And that was around 5,000 BCE. And that's pretty much all written record. And now in the context of law, there is no written record of common law. What does that mean? Well, that should be kind of obvious, but there's human interaction with words existed so much longer, or so much before we started writing, that things like don't rape my wife, don't kill me, don't steal my things, all of the very fundamental things that everyone instinctually feels is wrong very, very empirically, there's no written record of that. Which is very important. I mean, that's very, very, very important for law. Constitutions are copied and statutes voted on. So you have, that is really the crux of all legality in any country. You have common law. If you're not in some sort of dictatorship, I'm not sure how many there still are out there probably are a couple, but you have no record of written law, and then some event happens, and then you have a government with a legislative body, right? We have Congress, the House, and the Senate. I'm more so doing this lecture on just constitutional law, well again, more on the definability of words than actually the U.S. Constitution. I won't be talking too much about the House Judiciary vote. It's really not super relevant. Well, I mean, it is relevant, but there's better examples. But constitutions are copied, right? I don't know when Magna Carta was affected. I don't want to say, super guessing, you can laugh at me if I'm way wrong, 1200 sometime, I don't know. I know the Chinese were there, that's the oldest politically unified, and that's for anyone who doesn't really understand why China is so much different. Well, not even really different, just more entrenched in their ways. It's because they've been politically stabilized since 221 BCE. So that's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of political unity before Western Europe started imperializing shit. So that's just a fun fact. That's not really super relevant either. But what happens is you have some constitution, people come together, maybe it's the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and you say, hey, here are our rights. Well, actually, what the U.S. Constitution does is sets up the United States government. The Bill of Rights says what rights the citizens have. But the point is, people voted on something, and this is now law. This is how things work. Now, past that, here in America or anywhere else, some event happens, and then the populace cries out, we want no guns, we want lots of guns, we want lots of drugs, we want no drugs, we want lots of drugs. And you vote on a statute. But it's grassroots driven to present the legislation to the legislative body to vote on. And then finally, once something goes into law, litigation is how you define the words of the statute. Statute becomes a law, and now Johnny says, hey, Billy, you stole all my shit, give it back. And Billy says, I didn't steal it, you owe it to me. And then you go to court and you figure out who's right and who's wrong. You have in court, brief, how does court function? There's what's called the discovery of facts, and that is unanimous. You simply say what happened, and then you argue on top of that. But you don't get to deny the facts of the case. And what does that mean? I mean, what is, in our point for this lecture, is this is 50,000 years plus 2,020 years, 52,000 years, and we still can't really define the most basic feelings we have. For real. And how do we know that? Well, we have examples. Marvin Miller versus California was a Supreme Court case that really tried to define what is obscenity, what is obscene. And let's look at their definitions. Obscenity, this is the definition that got overturned. Obscenity is utterly without socially redeeming value. And it got changed, the definition is to something that lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And my response as a citizen, as a student of law, as someone who should be barred, as someone who's really good with language, what the does that mean? These statements are so vague, I don't know what they mean. And that's my point. That's my point. 52,000 years, everyone knows what it's like to feel like, well, again, we have not defined obscenity, but we were going to. But we all feel things, we all know what it's to feel like angry, upset, frustrated, and then you say which words describe that experience, and each and every one of us goes, huh, we don't really know. And that's very important. This is everyone who goes to jail. This is everyone who doesn't go to jail. This is every lawyer. This is every contract. This is why words are so difficult to define. It takes a lot of time to figure it out. Moving on. So now we're going to address what's a very, let's say, the most prominent question in legal discourse, and that is, I think they call it objectiveness versus purposefulness, or intention versus objective. But really what it means is, I mean, I just gave you a 5-minute overview of all of human history, but even within the past 220 some odd years of American history, once there's discrepancy on diction and how to interpret law in the first place. But the question is, do you look at a statute and enforce the legality exactly as it is written, or do you try to interpret what the underwriters or what the legislature wanted? And the answer to that, there's an objectively correct answer, and you have to go exactly as the people have written the statute, for the reasons we just pointed out. And to emphasize that, I have a quote up here. I think this is Einstein, I don't know, but if you can't say it simply, you don't know it at all. And my response to that is, if you can't say it at all, you don't know anything. And what we just, I have rewritten up here the change the U.S. Supreme Court made to the definition of obscenity. It went from obscenity is utterly without socially redeeming value to obscenity is something without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Are those statements different to you? No, they're not. This is what I call, and what everyone calls, word salad. When someone doesn't know what they're talking about and they just ramble on for a while and hope something sticks, this is in your laws. Word salad is just shit people don't know what they're talking about. And picking back up from the first video clip, we showed you the empirical value function in a mathematical and linguistic sense is how you say no. It's also how you assess difference of statements. If I said, I went to the store on the street, you said, okay, great. Brad drove his car, or somehow he was on a street and he went to the store. If I said, Brad went to the store on the street that he was on, from the street into the store, the end. I don't know. The point is there was no difference. You didn't perceive any difference of what I was doing. If I said, what does that mean? You'd say, well, I don't know. And this is laws, man. This is when people go to jail for stuff. But again, I don't know the case. I didn't review anything. But I'm simply showing you, over hundreds and thousands of years, people can't define words correctly. And so I have, again, up here written the empirical value function, yes or no. Does this change in diction present to you any logical difference? And the answer is no. And this is why, this isn't why, but this is how it functions. This is how you assess validity of statements. But this is why you absolutely have to be scientifically objective when interpreting statute. There is no leeway, because 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. And if you can't say something correctly and there are right answers in language, how are you going to enforce that on another person? Or how are you going to interpret that in case law? You can't. You cannot. And that's not perfect. It's not. I have other criticisms to the judicial system, which again is more from an educational standpoint. But a judicial system, if you want, there is no chance to have consistent statute and consistent case law judging anything on intention. You can't do it. Not possible. Do not do it. It's illegal. And it's wrong. I mean, it's objectively wrong. But this is hugely poignant for legal context. If you're not really into law, or you're not a lawyer, or you're not a business owner, you should still care. I mean, someone can arrest you and take you to jail, and you should know these things. And I guess that's another. Well, I guess I'll do that on the next slide. And now I'll just say, well, I want to talk about how I learned law. And again, it's just reading a bunch of books. But well, I guess I'll just recommend it now. If you're a citizen, you should absolutely learn the law. You don't need to be a barred lawyer to have a functioning understanding of how this stuff works. And it will save you tons and tons of money, and you'll be completely aware when people are treating you like shit illegally, like when people are messing you up illegally. But the book that anyone should read, if you had one book to read in law, it is Reading Law by Brian Gardner and Antonin Scalia. It's the best legal diction I've come across. I also, that single book is the best book of law. World history is a much larger endeavor than legal studies, but I also recommend Making Your Case by the same authors, Scalia and Gardner. But to all those lawyers, and to the judges, to everybody, to the jury, you absolutely have to interpret statute consistently with objectiveness.